Chapter 26. You're not healed enough, Tatterfell gripes, poking my scar with her sharp fingers. The imp has been singing to me since I got out of bed, getting me ready to face the serpent as though I was going to another banquet, and complaining the whole way. My dog nearly cut you in half not so long ago. Does it bother you that you were sworn to him, but you're still here with me? I ask, as she finishes the tight braid on top of my head. The sides are pulled back, and the rest of it is pinned into a bun. No ornamentation in my ears or around my throat. Of course, nothing can be grabbed. This is what he sent me, Tatterfell says, taking a brush from the table where she has laid out her tools and touching it to a pot of black gas. Maybe he regrets it. After all, I could be scolding him right now instead of you. That makes me smile. Tatterfell paints my face, shadowing my eyes and reddening my lips. There's a knock on the door, and then Tarin and Vivi come in. You won't believe what we found in the treasury, Vivi says. I thought treasuries were just full of gems and gold and stuff. I recall, ages back, Cardan's promised that he would give the contents of Balakin's treasury to the Cart of Shadows if they would only betray me and release him. It's an odd feeling, remembering how panicked I felt and how charming he was, and how I hated it. Tatterfell snorts as the roach comes in, pulling a chest behind him. There's no keeping your sisters out of trouble. His skin has returned to its normal deep green, and he looks thin, but well. It's an immense relief to see him up and moving so quickly. I wonder how he was recruited to help my sisters, but I wonder more what the bomb said to him. There is a new kind of joy in his face. It lives in the corners of his mouth, where a smile hovers, and in the brightness of his eyes. It hurts to look at. Tarin grins. We found armor, glorious armor, for you. For a queen, Vivi says, which, you may recall, there hasn't been in a little while. It may well have belonged to Mav herself, Tarin goes on. You're really building this up, I tell them. Vivi leans down to unlock the chest. She draws out armor of a fine scale mail, worked so that it appears like a fall of miniature metal ivy leaves. I gasp at the sight of it. It truly is the most beautiful armor I've ever seen. It appears ancient, and the workmanship is distinct, nothing like Grimson's. It's a relief to know that other great smiths came before him and that others will follow. I knew you'd like it, Tyrion says, grinning. And I have something you like almost as well, the roach says, reaching into his bag. He takes out 3 strands of what looks like silver thread. I tuck it into my pocket. Beside the hair I plucked from Maddox's head. Vivi's too busy taking out more items from the chest to notice, boots covered in curved plates of metal, bracers in a pattern of briars, shoulder blades of more lips curled up at the edges, and a helm that resembles a crown of golden branches with berries gathered on either side. Well, even if the serpent bites off your head, says Tatterfell, the rest of you will still look good. That's the spirit, I tell her. The army of Elfham assembles and readies itself to march. White thin fiery steeds, swampy water horses, reindeer with jutting antlers, and massive toads are all being saddled. Some will even be armored. Archers line up with their elves out, with sleep-poisoned arrows and enormous bows. Knights ready themselves. I see Grim and Monk across the grass, standing in a small knot of redcaps. They are passing around a carafe of blood, taking swigs and dotting their caps. Swarms of pixies with small poisoned darts fly through the air. We'll be prepared, Grimamok explains, walking over. In the event that the bridle doesn't work the way they claim, or in case they don't like what happens next. Taking in my armor and the borrowed sword strapped to my back, she smiles, showing me her blood-reddened teeth. Then she places a hand over her heart. Hi, Queen. I try to give her a grin, but I know it is a sickly one. Anxiety chews at my gut. 2 paths are before me, but only one leads to victory. I have been Maddox's protege and Dane's creator. I don't know how to win any other way but theirs. It is no recipe for being a hero, but it is a recipe for success. I know how to drive a knife through my own hand, I know how to hate and be hated, and I know how to win the day, provided I am willing to sacrifice everything good in me for it. I said that if I couldn't be better than my enemies, then I would become worse. Much, much worse. Take 3 hairs from your own head and knot them around the bridle. You will be bound together. Lord Jarl thought to trick me. He thought to keep the word of power to himself, to use it only after I bridled the serpent, and then to control us both. I am sure Maddox doesn't know Lord Jarl's scheme, which suggests that part of it will involve murdering Maddox, but it is a scheme that can be turned on its head. I have tied her hair to the golden bridle, and it will not be me who is bound with the serpent. Once the serpent is bridled, Maddox and Lord Jarl will become my creators, as surely as Cardan was once mine. As surely as Cardan will be mine again with golden straps digging into his scales. And if the serpent grows in monstruousness and corruption, if it poisons the land of Elham itself, then let me be the queen of monsters. Let me roll over the blood-blackened land with my red-capped father as a puppet by my side. Let me be feared and never again afraid. Only out of his spilled blood can a great ruler rise. Let me have everything I ever wanted, everything I ever dreamed, and eternal misery along with it. Let me live on with a nice shard through my heart. I have looked at the stars, says Bafen. For a moment, my mind is still too lost in my own wild imaginings to focus. His deep blue robes fly behind him in the early afternoon breeze. But they will not speak to me. When the future is obscured, it means an event will permanently reshape the future for good or ill. Nothing can be seen until the event is concluded. No pressure then, I mutter. The bomb emerges from the shadows. The serpent has been spotted, she says, near the shoreline by the crooked forest. We must go quickly before we lose it again. Remember the formation, Grimamok calls to her troops. We drive from the north. Maddox's people will hold the south, and the Cart of Teeth, the west. Keep your distance. Our goal is to herd the creature into our queen's loving arms. The scales of my new armor chime together, making a musical sound. I am handed up onto a high black steed. Grimamok is seated on an enormous armored back. Is this your first battle? She asks me. I nod. If fighting breaks out, focus on what's in front of you. Fight your fight, she tells me. Let someone else worry about theirs. I nod again, watching Maddox's army set off to take up its position. First come his own soldiers, handpicked and stolen away from the standing army of Elham. Then there are those low carts that took up his banner, and, of course, the Cart of Teeth carrying icy weapons. Many of them seem to have frost-tipped skin, some as blue as the dead. I do not release the idea of fighting them, today or any other day. The Cart of Termites rides behind Grimamok. It's easy to pick out Royben's soiled white hair. He's on the back of a kelpie, and when I look over, he salutes me. Beside him are the Elder King's troops. Severin's mortal consort isn't with him. Instead, he's riding beside the red-haired mortal knight whose nose was bloodied by Nicasia's silky guards. She looks disturbingly chipper. Back at the palace, Biffy, Oriana, Heather, and Oak wait for us with a retainer of guards, the better part of the council, and many courtiers from guards both low and high. They will watch from the parapets. My grip tightens on the golden bridle. Cheer up, Grimamok says, seeing my face. She had just her head stiffened with layers of blood. We go to glory. Through the trees we ride, and I cannot help thinking that when I picture knighthood, I picture something like this, facing down magical monsters, clad in armor, sword at my side. But like so many imaginings, it was absent all the horror. A screech carries through the air from a denser patch of woods up ahead. Grimamok gives a sign, and the armies of Elham stop marching and spread out. Only I ride on, waving around dead tree after dead tree until I see the black coils of the serpent's body perhaps 30 feet from where I stand. My horse shies back, shuffling. Holding the bridle, I swing down from its back and move closer to the monstrous creature that was once Cardan. It has grown in size, longer now than one of Maddox's ships, head large enough that were it to open its mouth, a single fang would be half the size of the sword on my back. It's absolutely terrifying. I force my feet to move across the wilted and blackened grass. Beyond the serpent, I see the banners with Maddox's crest fluttering in the breeze. Cardan! I say in a whisper, the golden net of the riddle shines in my hands. As if in answer, the serpent draws back, neck curving in a swinging movement as though evaluating how best to strike. It's Jude, I say, and my voice cracks. Jude, you like me, remember? You trust me. The serpent explodes into motion, sliding fast over the grass in my direction, closing the distance between us. Soldiers scatter, horses rear up, toads hop into the shelter of the forest, ignoring their riders. Kelpies run for the sea. I leave the bridle, having nothing else in my hands to defend myself with. I prepare to throw, but the serpent pauses perhaps 10 feet from where I am standing, winding around itself, looking at me with those gold-tipped eyes. I tremble all over, my palms sweat. I know what I must do if I want to vanquish my enemies, but I no longer want to do it. This close to the serpent, I can think only of the brittle sinking into Cardon's skin, of his being trapped forever. Having him under my control was once such a compelling thought. It gave me such a raw rush of power when he was sworn to me, when he had to obey me for a year and a day. I felt that if I could control everything and everyone, then nothing could hurt me. I take another step toward the serpent, and then another. This close, I am stunned all over again by the creature's sheer size. I raise a wary hand and place it against the black scales. They feel dry and cool against my skin. Its golden eyes have no answer, but I think of Cardon lying beside me on the floor of the royal rooms. I think of his quicksilver smile. I think of how he would hate to be trapped like this. How unfair it would be for me to keep him this way and call it love. You already know how to end the curse. I do love you, I whisper. I will always love you. I tuck the golden bridle into my belt. Two paths are before me, but only one leads to victory. But I don't want to win like this. Perhaps I will never live without fear. Perhaps power will slip from my grasp. Perhaps the pain of losing him will hurt more than I can bear. And yet, if I love him, there's only one choice. I draw the borrowed sword at my back, hearts worn, which can cut through anything. I asked Severin for the blade and covered it into battle, because no matter how I denied it, some part of me knew what I would choose. The golden eyes of the serpent are steady, but there are surprised sounds from the assembled folk. I hear Maddox roar. This wasn't supposed to be how things ended. I close my eyes, but I cannot keep them that way. In one movement, I swing hard sword in a shining arc at the serpent's head. The blade falls, cutting through scales, through flesh and bone. Then the serpent's head is at my feet, golden eyes glowing. Blood is everywhere. The body of the serpent gives a terrible, coiling shudder, then goes limp. I sheath Herdsworn with trembling hands. I am shaking all over, shaking so hard that I fall to my knees in the blackened grass in the carpet of blood. I hear Lord Jarl shout something at me, but I can't hear it. I think I might be screaming. The folk are running toward me. I hear the clank of steel and the hiss of arrows soaring through the air. It seems to come from very far away. All that is loud in my ears is the curse Valerian spoke before he died. May your hands always be stained with blood. May death be your only companion. You ought to have taken what we offered, Lord Jarl says, swinging his spear down toward me. Your reign will be very short, mortal queen. Then Grim Amok is there on her stack, taking the weight of his blade. Their weapons slam together, ringing with the force of the impact. First, I am going to kill you, she tells him, and then I am going to eat you. Two black arrows fly out of the trees, embedding themselves in Lord Jarl's throat. He slides off his horse as a cry goes up from the curd of teeth. I catch a flash of the bomb's white hair. Grim Amok whirls away, battering 3 knights from the curd of teeth. She must have known them once, must have commanded them, but she fights them just the same. There are more cries all around me, and the sounds of battle having. From the shoreline, I hear a horn. Out past the black rocks, the water is frothing. From the depths, merfolk and selkies rise, their shining scales catching the sunlight. Nikas is rising with them, seated on the back of a shark. The Undersea honors its treaty with the land and with the queen, she calls, her voice carrying across the field. Lay down your arms. A moment later, the armies of the Undersea are rushing the shore. Then Maddox is standing in front of me. His cheek and part of his forehead are painted in gore. There is a glee on his face, a terrible joy. Redcaps are born for this. for bloodshed and violence and murder. I think some part of him delights in being able to share this with me, even now. Stand up. I have spent most of my life answering to his orders. I push myself to my feet, my hand going to the golden bridle at my belt, the one tied with his hair, the one I could have used to bind him, and the one I can bind him with still. I am not going to fight you, my voice sounds so distant. Though I would not delight to see the strap sink into your skin, neither would I mourn. Enough blustering, he says. You've already won. Look. He takes me by the shoulders and turns me so that I can see where the great body of the serpent lies. A jolt of horror goes through me, and I try to wrench out of his grip. And then I notice the fighting has ebbed, the vulgar stirring. From within the body of the creature emanates a glow, and then, through that, Cardan steps out. Cardan, naked and covered in blood, alive. Only out of his spilled blood can a great ruler rise, and all around people go to their knees. Grimamok kneels, Lord Reuben kneels, even those who moments before were intent to murder seem overcome. Nicasia looks on from the sea as all of Elham bows to the High King, restored and reborn. I will bend my head to you, Maddox says to me under his breath, and only you. Cardan takes a step forward, and little cracks appear from his footfalls, fissures in the very earth. He speaks with a boom that echoes through everyone gathered there. The curse is broken, the king is returned. He's every bit as terrifying as any serpent. I don't care. I run into his arms. Chapter 27. Cardan's fingers dig into my back. He's trembling, and whether it is from ebbing magic or horror, I am not sure, but he holds me as though I am the only solid thing in the world. Soldiers approach, and Cardan lets go abruptly. His jaw sets. He wipes away a knight who prefers his cloak, despite being clad only in blood. I haven't worn anything in days, the High King drawls, and if there is something brittle in his eyes, nearly everyone is too old to notice. I don't see why I ought to start now. Modesty? I force out, playing along. Surprised he can joke about the curse, or anything. He gives me a dazzling, insouciant smile, the kind of smile you can hide behind. Every part of me is a delight. My chest hurts, looking at him. I feel like I can't breathe. Though he is in front of me, the pain of losing him hasn't faded. Your Majesty, Grimamok says, addressing me. Do I have leave to change your father? I hesitate, thinking of the moment when I confronted him with the golden bridle. You've already won. Yes, Cardan says. Chain him. A carriage is brought, wheels wobbling over the rocks. Grimamok shouts orders. Two generals clasp manacles around Maddox's wrists and ankles, the heavy chains clanking with even the slightest movement. Archers keep arrows trained on him as they lead him away. His army is surrendering, taking oaths of submission. I hear the whir of wings, the clank of armor, and cries from the wounded. Redcaps freshen the pigment of their hats. A few folk feast on the dead. There is a smoke in the air, mingling with the scent of the sea and of blood and moss. The aftermath of even a brief battle is all dwindling adrenaline, bandages, and feting the victors. The revel will have already begun back at the palace and will last far longer than the fighting. Inside the carriage, Cardan slams. I stare at him, and the blood drying in tight lines over his body and crusting in his scars like tiny garnets. I force myself to look out the window instead. How long have I? He hesitates. Not even 3 days, I tell him. Barely any time at all. I do not mention how long it has seemed. Nor do I say how he might have been trapped as a serpent for all time, bridled and bound, or dead. He could be dead. Then the carriage draws up, and we are jibed out. Servants have brought an enormous velvet cloak for Cardan. This time, he accepts it, wrapping it around his shoulders as we make our way through the chilly underground halls. You will want to bathe, perhaps, Randalin says, an understandable sentiment. I want to see the throne, says Cardan. No one is inclined to gainsay him. The bath is full of turned over tables and rotting fruit. A crack runs through the ground to the split throne, with its wilted flowers. Cardan spreads his hands, and the earth curls along the seam, rock and stone bubbling up to fill it back in. Then he twists his fingers. and the divided throne grows anew, blooming with briars, sprouting into two separate thrones where there was once only one. Do you like it? He asks me, which seems a little like asking if someone enjoys the crown of stars they conjured from the sky. Impressive, I choke out. Seemingly satisfied, he finally allows Randall to guide us to the royal chambers, which are full of servants, generals, and most of the living council. A bath is drawn for the High King. A carafe of wine is brought, along with an ornate goblet studded with cabochons. Fala sings a song about the king of snakes, and Cardan seems both charmed and horrified by all of it. Unwilling to strip off my armor in front of all this folk and sticky with blood, I slip out and go to my old rooms. But when I get there, I find Heather. She stands up from the couch, holding an enormous tome. The pink of her hair is faded, but everything else about her looks vibrant. Congratulations, if that's not too weird of a thing to say. I don't know how to talk about fights, but I hear you won. We won, I confirm, and smile. She tucks at a double strand of very poorly strung rowan berries around her neck. We made me this for the after party. Heather seems to notice what I am wearing for the first time. That's not your blood. No, I say. I'm fine. Just gross. She nods slowly. And Garden, I say. He's fine too. The top tumbles out of her hand and onto the couch. He's not a big snake anymore? No, I say, but I think I might be hyperventilating. That's what you call it, right? Breathing too fast. Dizzy. Nobody in this place knows anything about human medicine, do they? She walks over and starts working on my armor. Let's get this off you and see if that helps. Talk to me, I say. Tell me another fairy tale. Tell me something. Okay, she says, trying to figure out how to undo the armor. I took your advice and told to be, finally. I told her that I didn't want my memories to be taken away and that I was sorry I let her make the promise. Was she glad? I helped Heather with one of the clasps. We had a huge fight, screaming fight, she says, with a lot of crying too. Oh, I say. Do you remember the fairy tale with the snake who has the helicopter parents and marries the princess? Helicopter? I echo. I did fall asleep at the end, so maybe I missed that part. When the boy's snake skin is burned, the princess had to earn him back by going on a quest. Well, I told V she has to go on a quest. She has to meet me all over again and do it right this time. Tell me the truth from the start and convince me to love her. Damn, the rest of my armor comes off, clanking to the floor, and I realize that her talking has distracted me enough for my breathing to return to normal. That is some serious fairy tale business. A quest. Heather reaches out her hand to take mine. If she succeeds, all my memories come back, but if not, then tonight's the last time I am going to see you. I hope you drink the cellars dry at the revel, I say to her, pulling her into a tight embrace. But more than that, I hope V is good enough to win your hand again. The door opens, and Oriana comes in. Upon seeing me, she looks panicked. Immediately, she bows low, pressing her forehead nearly to the floor. You don't have to do that, I say, and she fixes me with a sharp look. I can see she has a lot of thoughts about my behavior as High Queen, and there's a moment of sore satisfaction that she can tell me any of them without breaking her own rules of what's appropriate. She rises from her bow. I hope that you will grant mercy to your father, for your brother's sake, if not for your own. I've already been merciful, I say, and lifting my armor, I flee into the hallway. I should not have left the royal chambers. It was an old impulse to leave Cardan to rule while I operated from the shadows, and it was a relief to be away from all those staring eyes. But far from Cardan, everything has taken on a tinge of unreality, and I worry that somehow the curse was never broken, that all this is the fantasy of a feverish mind. I hurriedly retrace my steps through the hall, clad in only the padded gambeson and leg coverings under my armor. When I get back, I find Cardan gone, along with all the dignitaries. The bath water is still warm, and there are candles still burning, but the rooms are empty. I refilled it, says Tatterfell, coming out of I don't know where, and startling me. Get in, you're a mess. Where's Cardan? I ask, starting to strip off the last of my clothes. The brath? What else? She says. You're the one who's late, but as the hero of the hour, that's all to the good. I am going to make you into a vision. Sounds like a lot of work on your part, I tell her, but climb obediently into the tub, disturbing primrose petals floating there. The hot water feels good on my sore muscles. I let myself sink under it. The problem with coming through something terrible and big is that afterward, you're left feeling all the feelings that you shoved down and pushed away. For many long days, I have been terrified, and now, when I ought to be feeling great, what I want to do is hide under a table in the bath with Curden until I can finally convince myself he's alright. And maybe make out with his face, if he's feeling up to that. I surface from the water and wipe my hair back from my eyes. Tetherfell hands me a cloth. Scrap the blood off your ankles, she instructs. Once more, she braids my hair into horns, this time threaded with gold. She has a bronze velvet tunic for me. Over it, she puts a bronze leather coat with a high-curled collar and a cape-like train that blows in even the slightest wind. And last, bronze gloves with white cuffs. Dressed in such finery, it would have been difficult to slip into the bath unnoticed, even if horns didn't blur at my entrance. The High Queen of Elham, you Duarte, announces a page in a cowering voice. I spot Cardan, sitting at the head of the high table. Even from across the room, I can feel the intensity of his gaze. Long tables have been set up for a proper feast. Its platter is heavy with food, great globes of fruit, hazelnuts, bread stuffed with dates. Honey wine perfumes the air. I can hear performers competing to get the lyrics right in their new compositions, many of them in honor of the Serpent King. At least one is in my honor. However, our queen sheathed her sword and closed her eyes and said, I thought the snake would be of larger size. A fresh batch of servants come from the kitchens, carrying trays heaped with pale meat in different preparations, grilled and poached in oil, roasted and stewed. It takes me a moment to recognize what I am looking at. It's serpent meat cut from the body of the enormous serpent that had been their high king and might give them a measure of his magic. I look at it and feel the overwhelming disorientation of being mortal. Some fiery ways will never not horrify me. I hope that Cardan is undisturbed. Certainly, he appears blithesome, laughing as courtiers heap their plates. I always supposed I would be delicious, I hear him say, although I know that he does not take any of the meat for himself. Again, I imagine ducking underneath the table and hiding there, as I did when I was a child, as I did after the bloody coronation, with him. But I go to the high table instead and find my place, which is, of course, at the head of the opposite end. We stare at each other across the expanse of silver and cloth and candles. Then he rises, and all across the bath, the folk falls silent. Tomorrow, we must deal with all that has befallen us, he says, lifting a goblet high. But tonight, let us remember our triumph, our trickery, and our delight in one another. We all toast to that. There are songs, a seemingly endless array of songs, and this is enough that even a mortal like myself can eat my fill. I watch Heather and Vivi weave through the tables to dance. I spot the roach and the bomb sitting in the shadows of the reformed thrones. He's tossing grapes into her mouth and never missing, not once. Grimamok is discussing something with Lord Raven, half her plate heaped with snake and half her plate heaped with another meat that I do not recognize. Nikasha sits in a place of honor, not far from the high table, her subjects around her. I spot Tarin near the musicians, telling a story with great sweeps of her hands. I see the ghost too, watching her. Your pardon, someone says, and I see the Minister of Keys rambling at Cardan's shoulder. Concealer, Cardan says, leaning back against the table, his posture the easy languor of someone who's already in his cups. Were you hoping for one of these little honey cakes? I could have passed them down the table. There's the matter of the prisoners, Maddock, his army, what remains of the Guard of Teeth, Randalin says, and many other matters we're hoping to take up with you. Tomorrow, Cardan insists, or the next day, or perhaps next week. And with that, he rises, takes a long drink from his goblet, sets it down on the table, and walks to where I sit. Will you dance? He asks, presenting his hand. You may remember that I am not particularly accomplished at it, I say, rising. The last time we danced was the night of Prince Dane's coronation, just before everything went sideways. He had been very, very drunk. You really hate me, don't you? He'd asked. Almost as much as you hate me, I'd returned. He draws me down to where fiddle players are exhorting everyone to dance faster and faster, to whirl and spin and jump. His hands cover mine. I don't know what to apologize for first, I say. Cutting off your head or hesitating so long to do it. I didn't want to lose what little there was left of you, and I can't quite think past how wondrous it is that you're alive. You don't know how long I've waited to hear those words, he says. You don't want me dead. If you joke about this, I am going to kill me, he asks, raising both black brows. I think I might hate him after all. Then Cardan takes my hands in his and pulls me away from the other dancers toward the secret chamber he showed me before, behind the dais. It is as I remember it, its walls thick with moss, a low couch resting beneath the gently glowing mushrooms. I only know how to be cruel or to laugh when I am discomposed, he says, and sits down on the couch. I let go of him and remain standing. I promised myself I would do this if I ever had the chance again. I promised I would do this the first moment I could. I love you, I say, the words coming out in an unintelligible rasp. Cardan looks taken aback, or possibly I spoke so fast he's not even sure what I said. You need not say it out of pity, he says finally, with great deliberateness, or because I was under a curse. I have asked you to lie to me in the past, in this very room, but I would beg you not to lie now. My cheeks hit at the memory of those lies. I have not made myself easy to love, he says, and I hear the echo of his mother's words in his. When I imagined telling him, I thought I would say the words, and it would be like pulling off a bandage, painful and swift, but I didn't think he would doubt me. I first started liking you when we went to talk to the rulers of the Low Courts, I say. You were funny, which was weird, and when we went to Hollow Hall, you were clever. I kept remembering how you'd been the one to get us out of the bath after Dane's coronation, right before I put that knife to your throat. He doesn't try to interrupt, so I have no choice but to borrow on. After I tricked you into being the High King, I say, I thought once you hated me, I could go back to hating you. But I didn't, and I felt so stupid. I thought I would get my heart broken. I thought it was a weakness that you would use against me. But then you saved me from the undersea when it would have been much more convenient to just leave me to rot. After that, I started to hope my feelings were returned, but then there was the exile. I take a ragged breath. I hid a lot, I guess. I thought if I didn't, if I let myself love you, I would burn up like a match, like the wall matchbook. But now you've explained it, he says, and you do love me. I love you, I confirm. Because I am clever and funny, he says, smiling. You didn't mention my handsomeness. Or your deliciousness, I say. Although those are both good qualities. He pulls me to him, so that we're both lying down on the couch. I look down at the blackness of his eyes and the softness of his mouth. I wipe a flake of dried blood from the top of one pointed ear. What was it like, I ask, being a serpent? He hesitates. It was like being trapped in the dark, he says. I was alone, and my instinct was to lash out. I was perhaps not entirely an animal, but neither was I myself. I could not reason. There were only feelings, hatred and terror and the desire to destroy. I start to speak, but he stops me with a gesture. And you? He looks at me, his lips curving in something that's not quite a smile. It's more and less than that. I knew little else, but I always knew you. And when he kisses me, I feel as though I can finally breathe again.